Hi, and welcome to Kitchen Conversation with Lisa and Sterling. And today we're going to be talking about due diligence. We've recently published some quick guidelines to due diligence, looking at some of the elements that make a good due diligence defence. Lisa, due diligence has now been in the Food Safety Act for just over a quarter of a century.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it? And I think actually it was a turning point for food safety when we got due diligence, because at last people felt that they could actually do something to try to help themselves that would be considered in court if they did fall over and make a mistake. And of course, you know, everybody will make a mistake from time to time. And the opportunity to have the due diligence defence, I think, drove standards up tremendously from that point onwards.
Absolutely, because good due diligence is actually about producing good, safe food. All those elements make a strong due diligence case are actually going to prevent food safety, you hope, in the longer term anyway.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, even if it's in a very small business, we still talk about due diligence, although, you know, probably they would never actually have the wherewithal to be able to use that defence if push came to shove, because it is actually quite an expensive defence to put into practice, isn't it? I mean, have you had any experience in manufacturing, for example, where people have tried to pull the due diligence defence in a situation where they're being prosecuted?
We have, but funny enough, when you speak to regulators, if you present a good due diligence defence and you can convince them you have done everything that is reasonable and practical, they decide not to take the action anyway.
Right.
Because what they're trying to do in their own mind is to say, well, you know, was there some fault on the part of this company, or they have done everything that they should be doing?
Well, exactly. And I mean, is there a real public interest in taking a prosecution where somebody has, you know, genuinely tried not to fall foul of the law, and on one occasion has done something that has been wrong? So I mean, a lot of this actually is down to the history of the business as well, isn't it? The history of compliance. You know, recently in expert witness cases, I've had people say, "Oh, I'd like to use due diligence," and I sort of say, "Well, for a start, you haven't got very good documentation. There are massive holes in it. You know, you've got terrible problems. You haven't been listening to your experts telling you what to do, and you haven't been taking any action. Your pest control records show that you've had a problem for 5 years and you've not done anything about it. Why do you actually think you've got due diligence?" And they're going, "Yes, you have got a point there," you know. And there are some circumstances where actually the money would be better spent actually getting your house in order, pleading guilty to the offence probably, and moving on, and getting it so that you don't have a problem in the future.
I think it was interesting you mentioned about the size of the business, because one of the elements of due diligence from case law, isn't it? It depends on the resources that are available to that company.
Yeah.
And if you're a small sandwich seller in a small shop, the type of due diligence expectations are a lot different than if you're a multinational manufacturer with lots of resources available to you.
Yes, that's right. So, I mean, there is a huge difference. And it is what is reasonable. And in many cases, what is reasonable for a small catering business might be a very simple food safety management system, which follows the principles of HACCP but isn't a full HACCP at all. And I think from a caterer's point of view, what we have to make sure is that the system that they develop is sort of owned by them. That's probably the same in manufacturing, of course, but it's got to be really simple, it's got to be really practical. And the things that I see people sort of fall down on is that they sort of get something that's a bit too off the shelf and they don't actually tailor it to what they're doing. They have pages in there that have no relevance at all to their operation. And they have standards in there which you could say would be their critical control points, which they can't actually achieve in any way. You know, like the typical one would be we chill food to in 90 minutes from when it comes out of the oven to when it goes into the fridge. And that, you know, unless they use accelerated cooling methods or a blast chiller or something like that, it's really not going to be possible.
I think it's interesting when you talk about you know, what is practical for a small business and a large business. I think there are some common themes across both, which is the proactive element, isn't it? Is that it's not just a group of documents that sit in a drawer somewhere.
No.
It's got to be something that's living. It's got to be something that you're doing. I think too many people buy a off-the-shelf due diligence system and don't follow it, and they just think it's there to protect them against something going wrong.
That's right. It's almost like that's our hygiene over there on the shelf, and then what we do apart from that, you know, is we just get on with our lives in a normal way, and that's really not what it's all about. So it's very much a matter of having somebody help you with that maybe, or do it yourself if you can, if you've got the capability in-house, but making sure that it's really practical.
And I think that's another key element that people overlook, is third-party accreditation or a third-party view. Is if you're not careful in an operation, you start to lose the seeing eye. You don't know if your systems are good or bad, and no matter how big or how small your business is, always benefits, I think, from somebody else coming in and challenging it. And I think that is a cornerstone of any due diligence defence, is that you could say that you've got an expert in to review what you're doing and to give their view.
I mean, even if you've got experts in-house, it's always useful to have a fresh pair of eyes, isn't it? It's amazing what someone can see when they walk in cold, really, to the business. And of course, it's exactly the same if the business were facing enforcement action. At that point, they go, oh, I've got all these holes in my due diligence system. If only I had looked at this before. Because it seems blindingly obvious when things have gone wrong. But what people almost need to do is have a what-if scenario.
So another element can be training, which obviously a lot of people think is very important. But I think training is okay as long as it drives behavioural change. And I think now there's a greater appreciation of the importance of food safety culture in any due diligence defence, that you can demonstrate that you're not just training people, but you're taking steps to make sure that they're doing the right thing.
And I think one of the things you can do with your internal checks is to actually include on those checks questions that you ask people as you're going around. So, for example, in catering, you might want to ask people, front of house staff, if I've got an allergy to X, how would you deal with that? Show me what you would do. Or it may be that you're watching somebody to make sure that they wash their hands, for example. And you're doing those sorts of checks to make sure that the training has been effective. And then I think the other thing is that following on from an internal audit, you actually put into place training so that you can actually sort of get everyone round and say, right, in the last couple of hours I've been watching you, only one person's washed their hands. They've probably failed on about 5 counts to do the hand washing. You've done this, that and the other that needs improvement. So how can we collectively make this better? And sort of improve the food safety culture in a way, but there's no point in just having a report that's all the boxes are ticked or crossed and then nobody looks at it after that. You've got to follow it up with some coaching. And
of course, the other key element of any due diligence defence is the application of HACCP. I mean, it is the standard legally required risk management, risk assessment tool. And I think whenever I used to go into organisations or when I've asked to be an expert witness, it's one of the first things I look at because the HACCP plan tells you so much about the organisation, the way it's structured, how effective it is, how proactive it is. Are they resourcing certain areas of the business that when the HACCP programme might indicate that it's weaker than it should be. So I always think HACCP is a key cornerstone.
It's a good place to start, isn't it? I mean, it's where you set out what you plan to do and then you measure against that and you train against that as well. So I think the training actually needs to be HACCP focused rather than just off the shelf. I mean, there are places for off the shelf training courses, but the most effective ones in my experience have been the level 3s where people have actually put together a programme that's specifically for the business, or the trainer understands the business and they actually talk about everything in relation to how the management of the food safety is in that business. So, you use this control here. When you're talking about HACCP in the course, you're actually saying, well, at the cooking stage, this is what we do here, and this is how we take the temperature, and this is where we record it. And it means so much more to the individuals if they know the training is actually related to their practices.
Do you know, one of the things I often find is absence in any due diligence programme is a crisis management system, and how often people should not wait till they're in a crisis to come up with a crisis plan. And things normally go wrong or escalate because they are not prepared for a crisis, they're not prepared for an incident, and that slow, inadequate response sometimes kind of exacerbates a problem because they can't recall the products off the shelf. And obviously, if they do that very slowly and more people get affected by a problem, then the regulator obviously will take a very dim view of it.
I mean, that's less so, I suppose, in the catering situation, but very relevant in manufacturing.
So we've produced some guidelines, which is not so much a checklist, but more kind of trying to highlight some of the elements that have come from case law and good practice and some of our shared experience, which you'll see on the presentation that's at the end of this podcast. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.